You are listening to the Monday Night War Review, where frankincense, big business, and big techs chronologically review the Monday Night Wars from 1995 to 2001 between WCW Nitro and WWF Monday Night Raw. Join us for this roller coaster ride of nostalgia and hilarity.
It's my life in the box in front of me. Taking talk in my arms is the soul of me. You walk by, ask to see me laying face down.
Alright, so welcome to the Monday Night War Review. Although it's not really a war right away, because one of the TV shows was not even airing on the night of September 4th, 1995. Conspicuous by its absence is Monday Night Raw, which was apparently canceled because of the U.S. Open and the Westminster Dog Show. How do you guys think Vince McMahon felt about all of this?
I think he thought, eventually I'm going to destroy this company and then I'm going to buy it and put it on my streaming network.
You think he was that prescient about the whole thing? He knew that he was going to one day own WCW?
The man's clearly a tycoon.
What do you think, Tex?
Probably much more irritating for him than it was for me, and I hated it as a kid anytime you had to miss Raw because of the dog show. That always seemed like one of the worst reasons to cancel Monday Night Raw.
Well, I gotta say, I've been watching a lot of the Raws from 1995 that, lead up to the Monday Night Wars, and you can see that Vince and the WWF were pretty complacent in what they were doing until this happened. You know, it's been Mabel versus some jobber, and Rad Radford versus some jobber, and et cetera, et cetera. And I actually watched one Raw that had no non-jobber matches on the entire card. The main event had a jobber, and I was like, well, it clearly I think this at least got Vince kind of shook. Things are gonna shake up, but this week, back on September 4th, 1995, it was only WCW Nitro, and it was the first ever episode of Nitro that ever aired live on TNT, and from a very interesting venue at the Mall of America in Minneapolis. I don't know if I've ever seen another wrestling show held there, but I really thought it was a pretty awesome venue. I loved all the fans on the second floor of the mall, and I loved the escalators in the background. At times you could even see certain stores that I thought were pretty funny, I don't know if you guys saw the Great Train Store in the background. Yep. Was one of them that I saw. And then also Alamo Flags. I thought it was just pretty funny that there were two stores that were dedicated to trains and flags. Did you guys notice anything about Mall of America?
Yeah, I'll say real quick, because I'm sure we'll talk about this segment in particular. But there was a specific restaurant that I think had opened very recently, and I kind of got the impression that the sole reason Nitro was there was to promote Hulk Hogan's business venture.
Well, he's referring to Pastamania, which was Hulk Hogan's new, pasta buffet kind of restaurant. But, obviously we will talk about Pastamania in great length. But yeah, any comments on the Mall of America, Tex?
I just had it in my notes that it was a fun venue, fun atmosphere. It's pretty unique. You don't really see that every time you tune into wrestling. So I thought it was kind of cool as a visual.
Yeah, I really thought Bischoff's comment about it was pretty funny when he said it's the only place big enough to hold Nitro. I just thought that was pretty funny, because it's clearly you could hold more fans in other places. They literally had 15 rows of seats, and then they just had people filling up the mall or something. And then I also thought it was funny when Heenan used the mall in commentary sometimes. I think in the Pillman Liger match, he said something like he sent him flying from Bloomingdale's to Macy's. I thought that was pretty good.
Well, real quick, Heenan wasn't the only one who talked about how appropriate Mall of America was. Mongo said something, and I'm still trying to figure this out, but I was pretty perplexed when he said it. He said, "This place is apropos
That's
and
right.
that don't mean you're digging around in the dirt with farm implements.
I'm glad you brought that up because I remember that now, but I hadn't written it down. Well, apropos seemed okay, but then, yeah, I don't know what he was trying to say with the second part of that.
And I think that was the first of a couple things he said where he kind of screwed it up, because I have a couple other items, and we'll get to them later, where he started going down a path, and then it just ended up not making any sense.
I liked his back and forth with Heenan a lot. This really reminded me of like old school stuff, like when he had the shocker buzzer on his hand when he shook hands with Heenan and he shocked Heenan, and he called him Bobby the Stain at one point instead of Bobby the Brain, and he even called him the Hernia.
Yep, Bobby Hernia.
which I guess is just supposed to be like a pretty weak play on just Heenan or something, but like the Hernia, yeah, I mean. And at a few points, Bobby called him McMichaels instead of McMichael. He did it a couple of times, and then he kept confusing what sport Mongo played at times. Like he said that he played for the Cubs and just like funny stuff like that. Where he played for the Bears,
I don't remember Mongo from back in the day, but just paying attention to what this guy said, and I never would have paid attention, back in the day, but he butchered a lot of what he was trying to say, and it just came across horribly. And I almost felt bad for Heenan and Bischoff having to deal with him.
If I was constructing like the awesomely bad Hall of Shame commentators, Mongo would probably be on it. But I guess I just found him so entertaining on some level that I didn't really mind it. But I guess if we're gonna watch a whole lot of Nitros and get a whole lot of Mongo, I bet my patience will wear kind of thin.
The thing I remember about Mongo as a kid, I remember watching him, wondering why he was in, the Four Horsemen. And I remember my dad telling me, he used to play football. He played for the Bears. He played for the '85 Bears, which is arguably one of the best teams ever put together in the NFL.
Right.
They almost went undefeated that year. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler. 2-time All-Pro. He was a legit NFL player. He had a legit NFL career. But as far as his work on the mic, yeah, I'm good. He he stumbled over a lot of things. I didn't like his ring work either. I wasn't a big Mongo fan.
Bischoff kind of reminds me of McMahon a little bit on the mic. Like, he's very excited. Like, he does a great job of like being excited and making you excited about the show and having a lot of energy. But then when it comes to like actually calling moves in the ring, he's a lot like McMahon. Like, it'll be like what an unbelievable maneuver, or wow, what an athletic reversal, or like, he's not. And so really on this team, we don't have anybody who's really calling wrestling that well, because Bobby Heenan was never a play-by-play guy, and so you really don't have a good play-by-play guy at all, and I think that's kind of lacking a bit. But, the show did a 2.5 in the ratings. And, just for reference, the highest rated Raw of all time was an 8.1, and the highest Nitro ever was a 6. And so this did a 2.5, which isn't like terrible, but also it isn't huge. The first match we actually get is Brian Pillman versus Jushin Liger. It goes for 6 minutes and 53 seconds. This was in my 500 matches to watch before you die book, which took me a really long time to read. 500 matches is a lot. I don't think I'll watch them all before I die. Because it was in my book and they kind of put this match over so much in the book, I was a little bit let down by the Pillman-Liger match. I thought there were some nice spots. Pillman did this standing drop kick as Liger came off the ropes, which I thought looked really good. He kind of like sniped him out of the air. There was a surfboard stretch from Liger that I thought looked nice. But, the match had a lot of botches. There was one time where Liger basically just landed on his head during a Hurricane Rana, and that looked really bad. They mistimed a moonsault at one point where Liger was just kind of getting ready on the top rope and Pillman was just kind of standing there waiting for him. Yeah. And then it looked awkward. And then when Liger landed on him, he kind of only hit him with like his legs. And so it looked really painful and awkward for Pillman. And There was also a botched flying head scissor from Pillman that looked really weird. Like, you know, Liger didn't like go over him and do a somersault. Liger kind of just like fell forward when the head. Anyway, I mean, if you watch the match, you'll kind of see these botches that I'm talking about. Even the roll up at the end of the match looked a little messy. And you know, that's how Pillman won at the end. It's kind of a sort of a I guess kind of a victory roll of sorts, but it was pretty sloppy looking. And they did claim that Liger had a knee injury that he was recovering from, and so I think the commentators tried to attribute a lot of what was going on to him and his ailing knee. They shook hands at the end, typical face versus face kind of thing. They shook hands out of sportsmanship. I mean, I gave the match 2 out of 5 stars. You know, I mean, I just broke down the choreography of it, but what do you guys think about this opening match for the first ever Nitro?
You know, I was fine with it. You know, the wrestling was fine. I don't notice the botches as much. I'm a pretty simple guy to please when it comes to this stuff. I thought it was cool that you had this guy from New Japan coming to WCW, and they said that, like, they basically said it was a wrestling star from Japan. I guess I kind of viewed it as, like, I hated that they shook hands at the end and did this whole teamwork thing. I think you could have set up something cool about like an outsider, you know, and not just an outsider, a Japanese outsider,
right?
Like coming and, you know, maybe Pillman wins and Thunder Liger does something bad after, you know, the match has ended. So I thought it was kind of like boring from the perspective of, you know, is there any kind of story here beyond just like, oh, clean Brian, flying Brian and Thunder Liger coming and fighting? But I will say real quick, Mongo had another comment about this one that made no sense to me. I'm still trying to dissect it. He said, if the fans weren't tuned into this, they didn't see a match worth watching. And
I remember that too. He said it so emphatically, and it was like the last thing you heard about the match. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that was kind of a double negative. Like,
exactly.
You know what he was trying to say, but it was such a roundabout way of saying it. Yeah, I mean, had you seen this match before, Tex?
No, so I hadn't seen this match before, and actually I hadn't seen very many Brian Pillman matches before the WWF era, you know, when he came along. So that was kind of interesting to see, you know, kind of why they called him Flying Brian. I didn't really, you know, realize that his style was, you know, kind of, you know, faster pace, you know, a lot of high fly moves. I didn't realize he was trying to do, you know, flying head scissors that he eventually botched. But I mean, I thought the work overall in the match was pretty good. I thought they were working their butts off. It's just you did notice the few botches. You noticed the, you know, where Pillman had to wait on Liger for that moonsault. And a quick note on Liger. If you remember on the game WCW versus the World on PlayStation 1, yes, Jushin Liger was the unknown. He was also the unknown on WCW NWO World Tour.
I totally forgot about the unknown character in those games.
He was the unknown.
That's a good shout out. I did not put that together. You can get Jushin Liger hats, which is like it's like his mask, but you just wear it on your head, and then you can like pull strings to like move the 2 like cones he has on his head or whatever. I've seen these hats; they're ridiculous. But
well, speaking of the mask, Mongo said, "I hope he don't make him swallow that mask. It might stick on the way down."
Yeah. No. I mean, bring on every Mongo line you wrote down or remember, because they're all worth talking about. Yeah, and you know, like, I think it's hard to talk about this match in a vacuum because, I mean, it is the first ever match that they ever show on Nitro, and so, you know, it's like it kind of earns some bonus points for me. Like, you're already excited about it and everything, but then I think if you look at it objectively, it's just not that great. And I agree with what you said, Business, about, like, you know, having the shake of hands at the end. Like, I would have liked a little bit more heat. It's a little like, I think face versus face is hard to make interesting because you don't have anybody to really hate. And so it does really rely on just great in-ring work, and you almost need one of the characters to kind of have a mini heel turn in the match where they start stooping to, cheating or even just slight cheating, like feet on the ropes or pulling tights or, cheap shots or whatever, and there's actually a wrestling term called Pearl Harboring someone, which I think
awesome.
is incredibly...
Which it would have been perfect for the Japanese guy.
And see, like, Pearl Harboring is where you, like, attack the guy from behind before the match even begins. And, like, it's obviously a very kind of racist term that people use.
I didn't know there was a term for that.
Yeah, it's called Pearl Harboring. Like, those moments, right, where the bell rings and then the bad guy, like, attacks him from behind. Like, I would have liked for Liger to, like, shake his hand and then Pearl Harbor him from behind afterwards or something. I don't know. But, I also... I'm pretty sure, unless it was just a younger referee that looked a lot like him, I'm pretty sure this was Nick Patrick refereeing this match. And I gotta say, I really don't like Nick Patrick as a referee. Like, I don't know why he does this, but, like, he wiggles his hand and, like, shakes it. And, like, he, like, counts 1, and then he picks up his hand and, like, wiggles it. Then, like, he counts 2, and then picks up his hand and wiggles it, and then counts 3. So his count is all slow and out of rhythm, and, like, it's painful to watch, and I just know that it would mess with me if I was one of the workers. Like, I'd be like, God, this, like, timing is so weird, and it's so slow, and, like... I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's fine as a referee otherwise, but, like, his counting just pisses me off. There was a funny line. Mongo said something about surfing. He made some joke about surfing to Heenan about how, like, Heenan never surfs or hasn't seen a surfboard that good since whatever. And I love how Heenan's response was that he doesn't surf, he pays someone else to do it for him. Like, I gotta say, I just love Bobby Heenan. Like, even when he's not having the greatest time, he just is amazing. So yeah, I mean, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I think I could see someone going as high as 2.5. I could also see someone going as low as 1. But not a terrible match. After that, we had a quick throwaway promo from Sting. It was so short, very generic. He's at this point he's still the man called Sting. The blonde kind of spiked hair. He's not NWO Sting. He's not Crow Sting who's falling from the rafters or like. But yeah, he basically just says he's gonna walk the walk, something to that effect. And, at the end, he threatens to slap the Scorpion Deathlock on Flair, and, it's very short. Then I think we get what is arguably the most hilarious and interesting part of the show. We get the Hulk Hogan Pastamania segment. So
my favorite part of the show.
It's hard for it to not be. Business brought that up a little earlier. He was saying that might have been the whole reason why they chose the Mall of America. Hogan had opened this restaurant. I think that was going to be mostly inside malls and food courts and stuff. It's called Pastamania. It was kind of awesome and sad at the same time. Apparently, the restaurant only lasted for a few months. I liked in the beginning where Bischoff looked like he was trying to give Hulk Hogan a high five, and Hogan just kind of like left him hanging. I couldn't tell if Bischoff was just trying to like hold up his arms to get through the crowd, but it kind of looked like he was waiting for Hogan to give him like a high five or a handshake, and Hogan just never does. One of my favorite parts is when Hogan talked about slimming down from all the pasta he's been eating. Which I was like, I don't think that's really how that works, buddy. He also said that he was going to drag Big Bubba all around the Mall of America and basically force feed him some of the pasta,
which would have been really entertaining if it happened.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get any brawls throughout the actual mall. I guess that would have been kind of a liability for WCW. But I mean, they had plenty of money. They could have afforded to, mess some stuff up, but I thought it was funny that he was bringing up, he kept saying Hulkaroos. Like, he kept saying that Hulkaroos was some item on the menu. But then when I found the menu, I didn't find Hulkaroos. I found something called Hulkaroni and cheese, and Hulkios. But I didn't find Hulkaroos. So I don't know. I was trying to figure out what word Hulkaroos would even be playing off of. it kind of sounds more like Dunkaroos than
I heard
yeah.
Hulkaroos and Hulky-Oos. Like, and I just got the impression he didn't even know the menu of his own.
So there was a lot of Pastamaniacs, and Pastamania is going to run wild on you, but I liked in one of the pictures that I found that there were actual like noodles that were made to look like Hulk Hogan. So it's like his face and him flexing in different poses, and it looks like those macaroni and cheese noodles that look like SpongeBob or the X-Men or whatever, but they're all like Hulk Hogan, and I'll splice in an image of that. I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I mean, I've covered the choreography of it, but I mean, what are your guys' overall reactions to this?
I think I've kind of, said looked like a mess, but I was looking up Pastamaniacs or Pastamania, which is frequented by Pastamaniacs. And I found on YouTube a clip of the big promo they had at the Mall of America. It must have been beforehand, where Eric Bischoff gets up. I guess he's from Minnesota.
Oh.
So yeah, and they brought up Hulk and Macho Man, and it was this whole thing about why you should go to Pastamania, why it'll give you more energy to shop and pick up merchandise. Like, it was a mess. And it's totally unsurprising that this place failed pretty quickly. I mean, I can't imagine the food was good at all. So that's my 2 cents there.
I absolutely loved the promo. I wasn't expecting it at all. And then to come out of nowhere with Hulk Hogan in his true, yellow and red, with the Pastamania shirt, and you had Jimmy Hart there in his All-American suit, and he's among the people. He had all kinds of different people surrounding him. Everybody's going crazy. And then Hulk just goes into his typical Hulk stuff with the Pastamaniacs and running wild. I was entertained from start to finish. I thought it was awesome.
I was also grossed out by the international items on the menu. Like, who would get pasta mexicana or turkey tetrazzini or Swedish meatballs? Like, who would get any of these like specialty items on this menu? Yeah, but my feeling was that it probably tasted like bland, sugary crap. Something like Chef Boyardee. Apparently, I looked this up. Hogan also had a line. Hogan had a line of frozen hamburgers and frozen chicken sandwiches that were called Hulkster cheeseburgers and Hulkster chicken sandwiches. I'll splice in some pictures of those. They look like microwavable cheeseburgers, basically. Looks pretty gross. I found these funny pictures online of like the red awning of Pastamania that would be outside of like a store. I saw this hilarious picture of like the red awning had like fallen to the ground, and it was like buried in the snow. Yeah, I'll splice it in. It's really funny. Like, but yeah, I mean, just the audacity of that guy to be like, yeah, I'm one of the highest paid wrestlers of all time. I'm international. I'm already in movies. You know what I really need to do? Make a restaurant. Like, it's like, it just, like there's so many other ways that he could have made money than doing that, but anyway, yeah. Pastamania no longer running wild. Not even running mild. Not running at all. This card only had 3 matches on it, by the way. I mean, it was only about 40 minutes of TV, but I mean, we only had 3 matches. And so the second match is Sting versus Ric Flair. These guys have wrestled a ton. It's not like I've seen every single one of their matches, but I have seen them wrestle before. And from what I've been able to gather, their matches are pretty much like this every time for the most part. I thought it was sad and funny that Mongo called himself a punch-drunk jock. So he called himself he's like, I might be a punch-drunk jock, and just so you know, that literally means stupefied by a series of blows to the head is what that phrase means. And so I wrote that. I'm not sure whether that's funny or sad coming from an NFL player, but
especially these days.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a Mongo line that made sense. But yeah,
that was one of the few. And I almost got the sense that they told him to stop talking for like the latter half of Nitro, or to stop trying to make these things, because he had 2 during this match, which I'll get to, but I'll let you set the table.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So, when Ric Flair's in the ring, Bischoff makes a comment about Flair being frustrated, and Heenan agrees, and Heenan says that the frustration all starts with Hulk Hogan, and I felt like that could be kayfabe, but I also felt like it was a little bit of a shoot, because it turns out that Ric Flair had been the WCW booker for most of 1995, but Kevin Sullivan and Terry Taylor, took over the booking sometime in the summer, so before this, and apparently Flair stepped down from booking because he didn't get along with Hogan. Flair comes out, and then we get Sting coming out, and, it's been talked about before, but I think it bears repeating just how bad The Man Called Sting is as a theme song. I mean, I don't think you could really hear it that well on Nitro, but I mean, The Man Called Sting literally has lyrics that's like, he does this, he does that. Like, he's like as strong as a bull and like as quick as a cat. Lex Luger comes out before the match even starts. He had departed from WWF only days earlier. Apparently this departure, kind of this unceremonious departure, is one of the reasons that he's been barred from induction into the Hall of Fame for the WWE. Along with some involvement in the death of Miss Elizabeth. But I think, Vince, yeah. Vince usually buries the hatchet with people. Like, even people that he's had grudges with for like years, he'll still find a way to like bring them back eventually, or like, but Luger is still not one of those people. So I guess Vince is still pretty salty about Luger leaving and then showing up on Nitro only days later. Luger kind of just stands on the ramp and smiles at Flair and Sting. In a rare articulate moment, Mongo calls it unabashed arrogance, which I thought was better diction than I'd expect from him. The crowd actually chants for Luger, which is a bigger and more genuine pop than I think he ever got in WWF. God, the whole Lex Express thing in WWF, where they had the All-American bus tour that he was on, and how he was like made in America, and the whole like metal plate in his forearm gimmick, and like, yeah, Lex Luger just got booked badly in the WWF. And in the WCW, like, he's the total package, and he uses the torture rack, and they try to keep things pretty simple for him, which is what I think we need with Luger. Yeah, I mean, what did you guys think of the whole Lex Luger bit where he's in the aisleway?
So the visual and the description, I mean, this is what sticks with me from this match. You have Lex Luger with the Great Train Store in the background, and Eric Bischoff saying this place is like Thunderdome, folks. And it did not work for me.
I think Mongo said Thunderdome.
Oh, it was Bischoff or Mongo, but whoever said it just did not fit for me.
Yeah.
And Luger, I mean, from what I remember of him at the WWF, I agree. He was never anything to really care about. And this will obviously be at the end of Nitro too. He does not seem to have good charisma. I mean, that's just how I see it. I could not see how this guy would really blow up that much. But Tex?
So on Luger, I don't know if it's just because I was more of a WWF fan growing up, but my first impressions of Luger kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. I was never a big Luger fan. Not a big fan of guys, with great physiques, but then like have poor working punches. I really don't like guys who have bad working punches in the ring. He was always really good on the video games, though. But I just couldn't stand watching his matches. His punches were weak. Whether he was the narcissist or made in the USA, Lex Luger, he never really made it in the WWF. So when I saw Luger show up at the beginning of this match, I kind of rolled my eyes.
He did slam Yokozuna on I think it was like the Midway or like some military ship. You know, they
The
had
USS Intrepid, I think.
There it is. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. Like, it's so funny to actually watch that whole event because everything leading up to the actual Luger slam of Yokozuna is just so stupid and so boring. Like, they bring out all these like different athletes, like baseball players and football players, and they all just try to slam Yoko and fail, and like it's so like. Yeah, and then Luger lands on the ship via helicopter in a tank top and jeans, and you know gets a huge pop obviously because otherwise the fans were bored to death, you know. And then he slams Yoko, and that was probably the best thing he ever did as Made in the USA Lex Luger. But yeah, I mean he's definitely someone who basically got by in wrestling entirely off of having a great look. You know, he would just stand there and like flex his pecs and like stuff like that, and like that's probably what he was just meant to do, is just be like an enforcer or something. But yeah, the other thing that's funny about Lex is not only does he have bad thrown punches, but like he also always kind of yells.
Yes.
Like he always kind of like he's always like like every
Yeah, he
time
does.
he's like doing things in the ring, which is just overacting, you know. But anyway, in the actual match we had here, I thought Sting and Flair both looked pretty solid. You know, especially Sting. You know, Sting had these really crisp leapfrogs. He also had multiple gorilla press slams on Flair. At one point, he even like press slammed him from the floor back into the ring through the middle rope. You know, it's kind of funny that these two guys have like the battle of the woos, because you know Flair has his famous woo, and then Sting kind of also has a woo, but it's like a little bit different, where like Sting cups his hands around his mouth and then kind of like almost like he's calling the cattle or something, you know. You know, he also so I thought it was kind of funny. We did have like the battle of the different woos. You know, Ric Flair does his classic corner spot where he gets whipped into the corner and then does like a somersault over it. And then I liked how that turned into a clothesline on the apron from Sting, and it was a pretty stiff clothesline too. So I thought that was just a nice spot. I wasn't a big fan of the finish of the match. You know, it was very rushed, and it was also pretty inconclusive because like Arn Anderson gets in the ring while Ric Flair has the figure 4 on, and Ric Flair's holding the ropes, and the referee calls for the bell like really quickly, and so it's kind of hard to tell whether Flair got DQ'd for holding the ropes or whether there was a DQ because Arn Anderson came into the ring to interfere. We didn't actually ever get a winner of the match announced. You know, so I didn't really like the finish at all. They didn't even let Sting turn the figure 4 over and like reverse it. Like it looked like he was gonna do that, and then it just like didn't happen. Like he was like beating his chest and like trying to pump himself up like he was gonna turn over the figure 4, and then that just didn't even happen. And you know, but like I said, Arn Anderson comes in the ring and he interferes and he beats up Flair as a lead up for the Fall Brawl pay-per-view.
I have to ask a question. As far as the match goes, I was fine with the in-ring work. I did not like how it ended.
No.
I thought it was just kind of a letdown. Which this and then something else later in the Nitro had me thinking, is there like a known list of wrestling rules for the ref? Or
Kind of.
there okay, yeah.
So I actually have this book. It's called the WWE Book of Rules and How to Break Them. And it's not exactly what it sounds like. I thought it was going to be like an official rule book, but it's kind of it's presented as like this sort of like mythical rule book, you know, and it does have certain things in it, but it's almost like it's the unwritten rules of wrestling rather than the actual kayfabe rules of what would happen in the ring. And I think at one point Vince McMahon did want someone to write an official rule book, but I mean, really, the thing about wrestling is that you have to have the rules be pretty flexible so that you can do. But I mean, I don't. Are you asking about like someone holding the ropes or something?
No, it was in the next match actually. Maybe I'll hold off till then. It was just the ref breaking up, you know, punches. At one point, the ref pulled Hulk's hair, I think. And I just wasn't sure like what the precedent was for that. But as far as this match goes, real quick, I'll say the Mongo versus Bobby had two great insults from Mongo. The first being, I know Bobby the Brain is dumbfounded. He just walks around the next day. I don't know how that's an insult.
I think he just said. I think he said he walks around in that natural state.
Oh, in that natural state. Oh, see, I put closed captions on to see if I could like transcribe this, but maybe I got this one wrong too. You tell me. So at one point he says, "You've got to admit, Ric Flair is a vicious, cruel, and macho man. Probably unlike most of the women in your family, Bobby."
Yeah. See, I think he was trying to say that it was like
most of
that it was
unlike. I mean, I list these things once or twice, but
no,
yes.
You're right. I think he was trying to say that the women in Heenan's family were like men, but he said unlike the women in your family, and so it wasn't even a good insult.
And I feel like after that one, we heard less of Mongo trying to insult Bobby, which I was okay with.
Was this the moment where Heenan just asked out loud how long Mongo was going to be around? I think it was after that insult about Heenan's family. Bobby said something like, "Is he going to be around every week?" Like something like that, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean Mongo, he's
no Jerry Lawler.
No, but I think he actually did get the dumbfounded one right, because he said something like, "I know Heenan's dumbfounded. He just walks around in that natural state," which is such an insult for Bobby the Brain, who might be the quickest wit in all of wrestling.
I've seen a few Sting Flair matches from the early WCW days, and this one, as you mentioned, it looks pretty similar to the rest of those. Lots of press slams off the ropes, some stinger splashes, a lot of woos. But as far as the finish, I kind of expected like a false finish or something like that. I didn't really expect a conclusive winner. So that was, it was kind of disappointing, but at the same time, I kind of expected it. I gave it about 2 stars.
Yeah, I mean,
2.5 stars.
I mean, Ric Flair is kind of like Hulk Hogan, where they're able to just do the same match pretty much every time, but still get it over. Like, they never really deviate from their basic script, either one of them. But, it works. It works. They're both guys who can just really command a crowd. They both play their face and heel roles very well. So after this, pretty much right after it happens, we don't even cut to anything. It's just all of a sudden Scott Norton is invading WCW. I'm fairly sure, kind of like Jushin Liger, that Norton had been mostly working in Japan before this, and he's coming into WCW. It's kind of weird because it starts with Norton yelling at Bischoff. He's got some contract in his hand, like he's just signed something. But it's kind of unclear like why he's so upset. Like, is he yelling at Bischoff and Mongo because he didn't get booked for the evening? Is it because they didn't agree to the contract terms? Or, I thought it was pretty funny when he was yelling at Mongo, because he was like being really polite while he was yelling at Mongo. He's like, "You've already had a legendary career, punk. You've already had your time. You're one of the greats, so back down." It was like a mix of like giving him a compliment and yelling at him, and then yes.
Let me just say real quick. For it. I mean, because you're laying good groundwork. I had no idea what was going on. And, I ended up figuring it out as the segment went on, but I thought it would have been really fun, because this originally I was thinking that this was like a mall vendor who is angry at Eric Bischoff.
Oh no!
And that somehow they're gonna have Mongo beat him up.
Oh, that would have been even better.
That would have been incredible. Oh. But then I gradually figured out it was some like contract for WCW. So, but yeah, I was confused the whole time.
Yeah, I mean it was confusing because they didn't really have any big setup to it. Like, Norton was just out there like right after the match ended and everything. And then, Savage comes out and, he gets in, Randy Savage gets in Scott Norton's face. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Randy Savage said something like Flash Gordon.
Yeah, so on Scott Norton, I know his nickname for a little while. They used to call him Scott Flash Norton. Um,
Oh, so
I
he's probably saying
remember,
Flash Norton. Okay.
yeah, I think that's what he was saying. I mean, I've seen a few Scott Norton matches. I remember Scott Norton was a tag team. He was in a tag team with Buff Bagwell back in the day.
Okay.
I remember he was in Japan. He was one of those powerhouse wrestlers, a lot of power bombs, big shoulder breaker. Always seemed anytime he was cutting a promo, he was screaming or yelling. He was always pissed off. I remember my brother and I, we always bring this up, but he had destroyed a cruiserweight one time on Thunder, and he immediately walks to the camera, and I think Ric Flair was the commissioner at the time, and he goes, "Come on, Flair, give me some heavyweights." My brother and I always bring this up, so yeah. I remember Scott Norton very well, and Arn Anderson coming out in that Nike jumpsuit was pretty cool too.
Oh, I didn't even notice his attire.
Yeah, I always liked Arn Anderson.
Yeah, I like Arn Anderson too. Well, okay, so that makes a lot more sense about Savage. I mean, I was kind of hoping that he was just saying Flash Gordon out of nowhere in one of his crazy Randy Savage moments. But that makes sense with Flash Norton. So then we get a quick promo. Well, I shouldn't say a promo, more like a video package. We get a video package about Sabu, who is going to be coming to the WCW soon. And I have to say, I don't think this video package really did Sabu a lot of favors, especially if you had no prior knowledge of who he is. It kind of had cheesy guitar music, and everything was blurry. Like, I guess they were trying to highlight Sabu's speed and his unpredictability, but, like, the blurriness of the video just really got on my nerves. And... Like, and I love how the video package ended with him doing a moonsault where, like, he failed to go through the table. Like, he had a guy set up on a table, and he was doing a moonsault, and the table didn't break. So the video package literally ends with him failing to break the table and just, like, dragging it down and, like, toppling it over. And so we are gonna get a Sabu match next week, but. Yeah, overall, I felt like if I didn't know anything about Sabu, I would have been like who? Like, and what is going on? And, like, who are these guys he's wrestling? And just, and I don't want to give away a big spoiler or anything, but I think that Sabu is literally only going to be around for this one match on next Nitro, and then he's gone. Okay. But I'm not totally sure. But I mean, yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on either Sabu in general or on this video package?
I use that as an opportunity to go get a drink.
Good choice.
From the fridge.
Well, when I saw it, I was kind of shocked because I had no idea that Sabu was ever in WCW, and so that explains a lot for you to say that he was only there for a week. That kind of answers my question. I was wondering how long he was actually with the WCW. I remember him quite well from ECW, the suicidal, homicidal, genocidal Sabu. He used to do a lot of fun things in the ring and breaking a lot of tables, had some great matches with Rob Van Dam, but I had no idea he was in WCW at all.
Yeah, Sabu's great because you always know that it's going to be an entertaining match, but you always know that he's going to, at one point, botch something.
Yes.
Where he nearly kills himself or kills both people involved. But, I mean, yeah, he's awesome. And, I mean, we'll get to see what his match is like on the next episode and everything. But, yeah, didn't do the greatest job of putting him over. And so then after that, we get this quick Mean Gene Okerlund segment in the ring where he gives away a Harley Davidson motorcycle through some, like, sweepstakes. And so he gives it away to a fan. But then he also makes some weird comment about how he wishes that he bought 10 acres of land in Minnesota for $17,000 in 1953. Did you guys notice that?
I did. I guess he does wish he did that. I mean, land must have been cheap.
And then he's like, oh, but I was only 8 years old at the time.
Oh, I think I know what it was. Maybe it was like the land the Mall of America was built on. He could have purchased. Was that it?
Right. I think you're right. But it was just kind of weird. Like, it was so fast. And, obviously I was watching this episode in isolation, so I didn't know about this Harley Davidson sweepstakes they were doing. But yeah, just the comment about wishing that he bought the 10 acres of land for 17 grand in 1953. Then we get Bischoff plugging the WCW Saturday Night card, which is going to be Johnny B. Bad versus Dirty Dick Slater, and also Sting and Macho Sting and Macho Man versus the Blue Bloods, and it's going to have a special update on Fall Brawl. So we get a Michael Wall Street promo where he's in the back in the locker room, and he has returned to WCW. For those of you who don't know, Michael Wall Street is the WCW gimmick of WWF's IRS. Mike Rotunda, I think, is his real name.
Yes.
And he's actually the father of Bray Wyatt and some other current wrestlers. I have to say that I actually enjoyed this promo. I was never like the biggest IRS fan. But I mean, I love how he called the new generation the few generation. Clearly taking a shot at the WWF. At one point, he also says, "I know the IRS is going to be watching me real close," which was clearly a shot at his former gimmick in the WWF. I think it's funny how they eventually decide to call him VK Wall Street as a jab at Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So later on, he won't be Michael Wall Street anymore. He'll be VK Wall Street. Pretty sure he also joins the NWO at some point. But yeah, I mean, what did you guys think of Michael Wall Street?
I had one question. Does Michael Wall Street, does that gimmick predate $1 Million Man?
That's a good question. I don't think so, because Ted DiBiase had been around for a while.
Gotcha.
And I find it hard to believe, but I can't say that with certainty. But I don't think it was before the $1 Million Man. Do you know that, Tex?
Unless he was in WCW before like the early WrestleManias in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because I know, $1 Million Man was $1 Million Man against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 4. And that was in the 80s.
Right.
So, that one I'm not 100% sure of. I don't know much about Michael Wall Street. I thought I remember him being called Mr. Wall Street at some point.
Probably.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
He was,
they were calling him
okay.
Mr. Wall Street.
But I always liked him, or IRS, as far as his ring work. I thought he was really good in the ring.
Yeah. And I mean, he didn't have to do a lot with that IRS gimmick. I mean, like, it was just always, you guys are a bunch of tax cheats. Like whatever city he was in, I'm in Philadelphia, the nation's capital of tax cheats, or like, and it would always just be about everyone needs to pay their taxes and they're going to get audited, and like, and it worked every time. Fans would boo him, and he was very hateable, and so yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, I enjoyed the Michael Wall Street promo. It was short. It made some nice tongue-in-cheek comments about the WWF, which, obviously he had also just recently defected from. So that was pretty good stuff. I would have liked them to be like, oh, he's going to be fighting someone next week, but I don't think that ever came up at all. So yeah, now we're approaching the main event of the Monday Nitro card. We're going to get Hulk Hogan versus Big Bubba Rogers, and it's going to be for the WCW World Title. I like how Mongo in the very beginning, when he's talking about Bubba, he says, "Where does this guy come from? What part of the sticks?"
Yeah, I remember that.
That was
I had
pretty
that
funny.
out of my notes.
I mean,
Well, at this point, how long had Big Bubba Rogers been around?
I don't
Because
know.
I did not understand the gimmick. It was just like a hick in a suit.
He's got like slacks and suspenders on, and he kind of looks Amish, like, because it's just like a white shirt, black slacks, and suspenders, and so he actually kind of looked like Roadkill from ECW. I don't know if either one of you remember Roadkill.
Yeah, Amish Roadkill.
I'll splice in a picture of Roadkill in his outfit, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right, business, that it's just like straight up hillbilly, like. I think, he's Big Bubba Rogers and he's some hill jack. But I guess he dresses like he's Amish. Yeah, Tex, do you know anything about the Bubba Rogers gimmick?
Not so much. Not so much. I was familiar with him in WWF with the Big Boss Man and that great theme song he had in the early Boss Man days. But after that, the Big Bubba Rogers stuff, I'm not really too familiar with.
Yeah, it's definitely weak compared to the Big Boss Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you that Hard Times is probably one of the best wrestling themes ever. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Hart wrote that one. Kind of a lesser known fact about Jimmy Hart was that he was a musician and that he wrote a lot of the entrance themes, including Demolition's theme and a few others and stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway, we got Ray Traylor, aka Big Bubba Rogers, coming out in his Amish outfit. I gotta say, I really like Hogan's WCW theme music. I think it's pretty underrated. Obviously it might not be as good as the WWF one, when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside and everything. But I was listening to his WCW theme and I was like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. Like, it's cheesy and it's very, still all American or whatever. But I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of had forgotten about that. At one point, Heenan calls Mongo McNugget. Which wasn't that creative, but was pretty funny. I feel like Bobby Heenan does his very best to put over the Dungeon of Doom, despite how lame and washed up that faction is. This is kind of the first time we're really hearing about the Dungeon of Doom on the show, but it was Kevin Sullivan who was actually one of the bookers, and he went by the Taskmaster. And then he had all of these guys in the Dungeon of Doom who you might recognize. He had Kamala, who I don't know if they were calling him the Ugandan Giant, but they had Kamala. They had Earthquake, otherwise known as John Tenta, but they were calling him the Shark.
Yeah, the Shark. He eats flesh.
They had Brutus the Barber Beefcake, but he was disguised as the Zodiac. But really, yeah, the Dungeon of Doom is terrible.
Yeah, that's weak.
Like nobody in the faction is that great. I mean, actually, John Tenta, Earthquake, like he's a pretty good worker, but he's old at this point, and they're calling him the Shark, which is just pretty weak. Anyway, like Heenan's doing his best to put over the Dungeon of Doom, and then it's obvious pretty much since then in the match that like the Dungeon of Doom is probably going to be involved later. He's basically just like teasing that. Mongo talks about Hogan and says, he says he's had his pasta. This could go all night. So making a Pastamania reference that Hogan is going to be able to wrestle all night due to his carb loading. Oh, I don't know if you guys noticed this. At one point, you could see these two signs in the crowd that said Hogan sucks and Hogan is a wimp.
Yes, front and center.
Yeah, front and center on the hard cam. It's only for like a few seconds. But I thought that was really interesting because then you never saw those signs again. So I don't know whether those fans were chastised or what happened. Because I'm sure that WCW didn't want those signs on the hard cam for like their biggest face. But I thought it was interesting because you could tell that like, okay, the crowd is maybe starting to turn on face Hogan and getting a little bit tired of him, and kind of just planting the seeds for Hogan's eventual heel turn. Like I think, the All-American Hulk Hogan, its course is running out, and we're going to be getting Hollywood Hogan eventually. But I thought those signs were a nice little indicator that, not all was great in the land of face Hogan. It's a pretty basic match. Just a couple of big hosses out there, really. Lots of punches and clotheslines. At one point, Hogan smothers Bubba with Jimmy Hart's jacket. At one point, Bubba does hit the Boss Man Slam, which I think they just call it a side slam or something.
Yeah.
But of course, Hogan kicks out of it. Then he hulks up, typical, gives the big boot and drops the leg for the 1, 2, 3. Before we get into the Dungeon of Doom coming out, you guys have any thoughts on the actual match or the commentary or any of it?
I will, as far as a rating, 1 out of 5 stars. I was pretty bored the whole time.
Just burying it.
again, kind of going back to this, the rules regarding wrestling. There were a couple instances where, he had him in the corner, he was punching him, he was pulled off. There was, and I thought, okay, well, he was in the corner, maybe that's why the ref pulled him off. But then there was another time where they're just in the center of the ring, and Hulk is punching him, and the ref pulls his hair to get him off. And I did not understand the logic of the ref's actions. So I'm going to deduct a half a star for that. Sort of like half a star out of 5.
I gave it 2, but I'm with you that it wasn't that great. And going back to your question, I mean, technically you're not allowed to throw closed fists. Which is ridiculous because like it constantly happens in wrestling matches. But technically, according to the rules, you can't throw closed fists. So that's and if the guy's in the corner, you have a 5 count to break it up because he's on the ropes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I agree with you that it's pretty ridiculous when the referees put their hands on the wrestlers. Earl Hebner's actually kind of famous for this. Like, Earl Hebner will like shove guys if he feels like they're like stepping out of line or like. And I've never really loved where referees take spotlight and like really insert themselves in the match because they're really the best referees go relatively unnoticed. Like less is more for them, and so I think the ref like grabbing Hogan's hair. It'd be one thing if Hogan was the heel and he was grabbing his hair, but I mean, I agree with you that I don't like when the referees are too much part of it. What did you think about the match, Tex?
The match was pretty much what you'd expect out of a Bubba versus Hogan match. Big Bubba's another one of those guys, big guy, bad working punches. I'm not a big fan. But
they said he had some of the best hands, Tex. They said he had some of the best hands. Him and Johnny B. Bad have the best hands, but apparently you disagree.
Well, Johnny B. Bad had that Golden Gloves background,
True.
So. But a point about I have to take another look and I have to take another listen to Hulk Hogan's WCW theme because to me. When he was coming out, I was like, man, this is not the same without Real American. You got Jimmy Hart there, you got the red and yellow, you got the Pastamania. If we had Real American to drive everybody nuts, it would have really brought everything together. But I don't know. I gave it 2 stars. Like you said, a lot of punches and kicks, a lot of basic stuff. You had a boss man slam in there, and of course you had Hogan kicking out. And you had a typical big boot, leg drop finish. So pretty much what you'd expect. Hogan must pose.
Yeah, for sure. Well, he doesn't get much time to pose here because after the match, the Dungeon of Doom come out and they attack Hogan. But what I think is funny is they don't even do that great of a job. Hogan is just clobbering all of them. Like, I don't think any of them even get a hit in on him. Like, well, it'll like the Shark runs in, Hogan gives him a right and he falls out of the ring. Then like the Taskmaster runs in, Hogan clobbers him, he falls out of the ring. Like they were doing a horrible job of ambushing Hogan. And I thought this was really funny. There was like a brief moment where Bubba is in the camera, like walking away, and he says really, really quickly, "I wash my hands of it." Which I thought was like really funny. It's like, dude, you're a heel. Like, of course you wash your hands of it. Like, what are you gonna go back in and help Hogan? He just beat you. Like, and then Bubba literally walks away in the background with his hands in the air like he won. that cracked me up too. Like, but anyway, the Dungeon of Doom's doing terrible with their ambush. But then Luger comes out to help Hogan anyway. Even though that seemed like overkill because Hogan seemed like he was taking care of these geeks all by himself. And then, eventually we get this spot where Hogan and Luger are going to square up and almost clock each other. But I don't want to jump the gun. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the Dungeon of Doom.
It was forgettable for me. So, Tex?
Yeah, I don't have many thoughts on the Dungeon of Doom. Honestly, the way Hogan dispatched those guys, I was like, okay. The way he got rid of them, I don't really need to learn about them.
Yeah, that's very well put. Like, I feel like Hogan in like 15 seconds basically just buried the whole Dungeon of Doom. Like if these 4 guys can't take out Hogan, if they can't take out Hogan together, how are they a threat? Like, and I hope that we get some Dungeon of Doom promos in future episodes because they are terrible. And I just can't wait. I can't wait. I hope we get them. I mean, I like Kevin Sullivan overall, everything that I've read about him as a guy and a booker and everything, but the Dungeon of Doom was just not the business at all. So then Hogan and Luger square up. They almost clock each other. Heenan screams out World War III, which was kind of a funny line. And then Sting and Savage come out to try to help make peace between Luger and Hogan. I think Heenan even calls them arbitrators or something, which I thought was funny. But because Sting and Savage are going to be Hogan's partners during the War Games match that's going to be at Fall Brawl that's coming up. And you'll learn that Vader was supposed to be the 4th teammate, but then Vader is injured or taken out of action, and so it's all teasing up. Eventually, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but eventually Luger will join that War Games team. So they're kind of setting that up here with Sting and Savage coming out to make peace between these 2 guys and everything. I thought it was kind of poor production choice to like have these guys fighting and then have like a commercial break, and then like come back to them fighting in the ring again, because there was a quick commercial break it was basically just an ad for Fall Brawl, sponsored by the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I don't know if they would really do that now, like having an event sponsored by the MDA or something like that. I mean, I guess it's a noble cause and everything, but it seems a little, I don't know, out of place or something. There's even a clip of Savage, and he's like, help the MDA fight the battle against muscular dystrophy and help out my pals. And we don't see any of his pals. There's like one kid's face in the background, but it's basically just Savage. Like, it's like, yeah, we're helping out people with muscular dystrophy, but we're not going to show any of them. We'll just show Savage talking about them. But I mean, then after the commercial break, we jump back into the ring, and now Mean Gene is there, and he's in the ring interviewing Hogan and Luger. I really liked how Luger kind of got going with his promo, but then Hogan tries to interrupt him, and then Luger kind of yells back like, "You can have your piece, Hogan, but let me finish. Let me finish," which I thought was like almost like a shoot, where Luger was like, "Don't be trying to steal my spotlight, you asshole. Like, this is my time," because Hogan is known for stealing the spotlight. So it sounded all polite though at the same time. It's like, "You can have your piece, Hogan, but you gotta let me finish first." Like, it sounded like way too polite. Luger also delivers his famously awkward line where he says, I am sick and tired of playing around with kids." Did you guys notice that?
Yes. No, the whole Luger thing, I'm not excited necessarily for. I hope Hulk beats him because he's an idiot. And at one point he said he was saying something like, "Oh, I'm going to build my way up to you if it takes months, or years." And then Hulk does the whole, "We'll do it next week." And I could wait for a while. I'm not excited for a while.
Yeah, there's a weird mix of respect and resentment in everything that they say to each other. And Hogan is kind of confusing in his own way, because at one point he says, "You don't have to wait until next week," but then he indeed challenges Luger to a match next Monday on Nitro. He also at one point says, "Stick that stinky palm out," before they shake hands. And then Luger says, "I'm going to hit a home run." I don't know if you guys noticed that, but yeah. Luger yells out, "I'm going to hit a home run," which doesn't really seem that appropriate. And then, always the consummate professional, Mean Gene does his best job to put the match over, before signing off and everything. But yeah, I mean, Tex, what did you think of the Luger-Hogan standoff?
I thought for Luger it was a good promo. For him it was a good promo, but yeah, like you said, Hogan likes to steal the spotlight, and I kind of sensed a little bit of tug of war there with Luger trying to get his piece in, and everybody knows that's Luger's shortcoming is his lack of charisma. To me he's like a Hulk Hogan without the charisma. So.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, it's just so that line about like, because they kept saying WCW is where the big boys play or whatever. They kept like throwing that line out all night to like take a jab at the WWF. So I think Luger was trying to play off of that. Like I wanna face the big boys, and so that's why he made that line about the kids. But just the way he says it, makes it sound like it's pedophilia or something terrible. I am sick and tired of playing around with kids. Yeah, right. So. Okay, so Mean Gene signs us off. We're going to get Luger and Hogan for the title next week. I'm a lot more excited about Savage and Scott Norton than I am the world title match. Okay, really the last thing that we got to talk about is the final shot that we see of the commentary booth. Mongo has this little dog with him. It looks like some kind of Chihuahua mix. And the dog is dressed in a little devil costume. I was blown away by this because they had no lead up to this at all. Mongo didn't have the dog at all up until this point. They don't even explain it. I had to rewatch it to really like fully understand everything. And when I rewatched it, I did notice that Mongo called the dog Pepe. So he did say its name, and then he did chastise the dog for being a Dungeon of Doom fan, which I guess would explain why the dog was dressed up as a devil. Like, the whole idea was kind of like, oh, Pepe, you can't be a fan of them anymore, like, bad dog, or whatever. But it was so quick and so unexplained, and I did love the dog. Like, I was, like, a huge fan of the dog itself. Like, and I, apparently, guys, I looked it up, and there's going to be a lot more of Pepe in the future. And he's going to have different costumes. Like, I literally Google imaged Pepe, and there's, like, a million pictures of Mongo with him in different costumes and stuff. So, I don't know. What did you guys think about the dog?
So it sounds like Mongo eventually makes his way from the commentary booth into the ring, and I cannot wait for that.
That is correct.
I had the dog in my notes, just Mongo dog, couple question marks. Because I had no idea. I thought this episode was from September, so I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know if it was like an early Halloween thing or what, but I couldn't figure it out. So that makes a lot more sense now.
Well, he mumbled. I mean, not mumbled, but he said the whole line about the Dungeon of Doom really quickly. Like, see, I think it would have made sense if he just had Pepe out there in no costume in like the beginning, and then later he shows Pepe in the devil costume, and then you'd be like, oh, Pepe put this on because he likes the Dungeon of Doom, but bad dog, you can't like the Dungeon of Doom anymore. But this was the first time we ever saw the dog, and so all of a sudden to get this shot of the little Chihuahua in the devil costume, pretty funny. But yeah, pretty cute dog. I mean, I when I was looking up the pictures of it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be hilarious if we just get all these Pepe sightings in the future and stuff. But we had 3 matches on the card. I really think like the Mall of America aspect and the Pastamania aspect and just the whole spectacle of it being the first ever Nitro, it kind of had that novelty to me and, made it exciting to watch, even though I think on a in-ring work match level, nothing too special. I have to say that I think the biggest pleasant surprise was Michael Wall Street, because I kind of expected to either be totally disinterested or even worse, like angry about him. But I really liked his promo, and so I guess if I had to pick the pleasant surprise for myself, that would be it. And then my biggest letdown, I have to say, I think is the Pillman Liger match, just because, cruiserweights were always one of the things that I liked the most about WCW. And, I just was kind of disappointed by this match, especially since I had read about it in this book and it had kind of hyped it up for me. I mean, what about you guys? What were the biggest pleasant surprises and the biggest letdowns?
I'll say I enjoyed Mongo's commentary.
In a train wreck kind of way, though.
Yeah, in so far as he botched things pretty badly. I mean, the matches, I think there were missed opportunities in the Jushin Thunder Liger introduction. The Ric Flair Sting match, I thought the way it ended was kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the Hulk Hogan Big Bubba Rogers match was just did nothing for me.
Yeah.
And I'm really not looking forward to Hulk and Luger. So I'm hoping they put some stuff in there next week that catches my interest, like Randy Savage and Scott Norton.
What about you, Tex?
My pleasant surprise outside of Pastamania was I actually liked. I think I liked the Liger Pillman match a lot more, or a little more than y'all did.
Yeah.
Outside of the botches, I thought you had some pretty decent spots in there to get people kind of juiced up for the first match. You had Pillman with a nice dive from the top rope to the outside of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good pace to that match. I enjoyed it, but you did have the botches. It wasn't perfect by any means. My biggest letdown, probably the finish to Sting Flair.
Yeah.
When you expect, I didn't expect a conclusive finish like I mentioned earlier, but we didn't even really get a clear-cut winner. Like, they didn't even announce anything, so it was kind of strange.
Yeah, so I mean, next week, just to preview things, is again, we're gonna get Hogan versus Luger for the championship. We're gonna get Sabu making his WCW debut against Alex Wright. We're gonna get Sting defending the United States Championship against Wall Street. We're gonna get Randy Savage and Scott Norton, and we're gonna get a exclusive interview from Mean Gene with the Nature Boy. And next week we're also gonna get a competing episode of Monday Night Raw. And so next week the actual Monday Night Wars will really begin. Business, what would you call something like this where the war hasn't really begun but one side has made some advance? What do you think you would call that?
This is akin to the phony war. Early in World War II, the Germans had taken out Poland, but there wasn't really any action between the UK, France, and Germany. So,
it's the phony war.
We're about to get blitzkrieg.
I like it. I like it. The phony war and the blitzkrieg that is coming. We'll get that WCW card in the future, and we'll also see what Vince and the WWF counter program with. So, definitely looking forward to the official war starting next week.
It can only improve.
I don't know business. You might I don't know if you should speak so soon. There will be but I mean, I will say this, like, the competition kind of has to make both of them better. Like I said, I was watching the Raws from 1995 leading up to this point, and man, oh man, had Vince gotten complacent with his programming. So I think, having the competition will really bring out the best of them. And just a little sneak peek, next week we will have Bischoff throwing some serious shade at Monday Night Raw. And so, we'll talk a lot more about that next time. But this is Frank Incensed, and for Big Tex and Big Business, thanks a lot for listening. And make sure to tune in next time, and the war will begin.